Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, this is going to be a great show. I am so excited to welcome our guest today, Sherry Wilde. How are you doing today, Sherry? Oh, well, gosh, your book is so awesome. And I was just telling you just before we went on the air how I came across it in a synchronistic way. I had this credit I had to use on Audible Books, and I was like, and it was a recommended book, and I get it. And once I read it, I'm like, that was no accident that I've gotten this book because it's the same thing I'd been being revealed about us being here, like raising the planet's vibration into one of more unity and love and all of this. And I'm like, and it gave me chills. It's giving me chills now just thinking back on when I started coming across that information and realizing that there's this higher power at work helping us out. And so, can you tell I guess you can give there's a lot of videos out there that already sort of go over your book, and of course the book itself. And I think it would be great for maybe those who haven't heard about it or read it yet to maybe get a brief summary. And then I'd really like to get into why we're here and some of the bigger messages and the synchronicities, and we can get into the Mandela Effect and all of that too. I do have your link below as well, so people can get the book.
When you talk about getting goosebumps and talking about the realization of why we're here, that really takes me back to when the book came through me, because I was not all that much of a willing participant. The book just showed up. It just showed up on my computer. It's just like what I wrote. What I wrote in the book, I explain how it's like I came awake, sitting at my dad's dining room table down in Tucson, and I was clicking away on the computer and I was writing a book. I had been told that I needed to write the book about my experiences, my contact experiences, and I said no. And I kept getting pushed, is the way that I put it, because it's like a thought that you can't get rid of. It just won't go away. And so finally I caved in and I said, okay, I'll write the damn book. And I interviewed my investigator who investigated my case back in the late 1980s when I had the experience that really brought it all to light when I underwent hypnosis. And so I took notes and I got everything put together on it. And then it's like I woke up one day and I said, why would I write a book about this? I don't really want to talk about it. I don't want to tell people. I don't want people to know about this. And so when the book came out of me, it was an incredible experience because I was reading it as I was writing it. I was learning, putting together the pieces as it all came together in front of me on the screen. And I would get up every day and I would write for 6 to 8 hours a day, just clicking away, and it would just come out of me. And then I would read it as I go, or at the end of the day, I'd go back and read it and I'd be like, oh, that's how that went, or that's what that's all about. So toward the end of the book, when it evolved into the point where I talked about being a volunteer. Actually, I think I called myself, in the book, I think I refer to myself as a participant in a program, because that's the verbiage that was given to me, a participant in a program. That, I thought that was weird. I was kind of shocked by that, and it resonated with me, but I thought, this is strange. This is real strange to be saying this. But as you talk about synchronicities, that very week, probably even that day, or that very soon after I wrote that or read that on the computer, a friend of mine sent me a link to Dolores Cannon. And she was talking about the volunteer program, the 3 waves of volunteers. And I remember very clearly sitting at the table and I watched that video and I just started to sob. I mean, I just started to cry so hard because it was somebody else, you know, because sometimes you feel so alone in this and you feel so weird and freaky. Um, so, boy, I love her for having had the courage to start talking about that. And that was the first I had heard of her. And I started to look into what she was saying a little bit. I didn't go too far into it. I don't read UFO books. I don't read about other people's accounts. I get sent books and I don't read them. Maybe I'll do it now that I'm not writing anymore, but now that my own stuff is out there. But I didn't want to contaminate my own memories. But I did watch a few of her videos where she talked about the 3 waves of volunteers. And so since then, of course, I'm hearing from people all the time. I get emails every day from others who are waking up to the fact. And of course, you know, we're all volunteers. I mean, everyone who's here on the planet is here for a reason. We all have a purpose for being here. And those of us who refer to ourselves as volunteers, whether we're star seeds or light workers or whatever we are, whatever label we give ourselves, we all have a purpose for being here, especially now at this time. So it's interesting times.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and you know, we've got a room full. Most of my viewers here in the chat all have you know, realized that we're here for a higher purpose to raise the planet's vibration into unity and love.
Yeah.
And it's so nice
Mm-hmm.
that we can come together because for many of us, we are sort of outcast in our regular family life. And I do want to thank you for coming
Yeah.
out because you had to be really brave to come out with your book. And I know you caught a lot of flack from your family. It destroyed your family,
Yeah,
basically. You talk about in
it
your book,
did.
and you know,
Yep,
that's
it
really
did.
tough. You know.
Yeah, it is. And you know, I'm not brave. I was pushed out. I mean, I really was. I was pushed out. I didn't have any say in it. After the book was written and I refused to have it published, I was being pushed on it and pushed on it to have it published. And I haven't told the story too often about how Archangel Gabriel was the one who came and said this book needs to be published. And I said it can't be that big of a deal, you know. But you just don't. You can't. I couldn't say no. I wasn't allowed to say no, and so I was forced. Well, no, that's the wrong way to put it. I wasn't forced to do it. Certainly, I agreed to do this before I came here. I knew
Heavily
what I was getting
compelled.
into. Yeah, yeah. And so I laid out my life. I do remember that. Thank God I remember planning my life and laying it all out. So I knew what I was in for. It's just that once you're here, it's way tougher than what you think it's going to be when you're out on that side looking here at the planet. And so once you're here, you see why humanity has not awakened so easily, why they needed to have assistance, you know, the challenges that they have, and the control system that's in place is nasty, you know. And so I whine about it sometimes about not having what you would call free will or something, not having choices in my life. I had no choices. I There was a path and that was it. And do you ever watch that show Westworld on
I've
it's
seen a
on something
recap
that
of it. I never have watched the whole thing, but
yeah.
I kind of understand the premise of it.
Yeah, somebody recommended that to me, and I don't usually watch. I usually keep it pretty light. I watch sitcoms or something, maybe on Netflix. But they recommended Westworld, and I see why. I started watching it. It's pretty disturbing to me because it's the premises is that there's this fake reality, and the people who live in that fake reality, it's the old West, and the people from the modern times go into that world, and they're allowed to act out all their aggressions, you know, in nasty and terrible ways. And so the people who are in the fake world are programmed with certain storylines and certain things that they say and reactions, and they keep repeating. Then they're taken out and then put back into the world, and they just keep doing it over and over again. But the thing about it is that it reminds me a lot of my own life, you know, because I feel like I'm the same way. I've been programmed to do what I'm doing. And a lot of us who are volunteers, we definitely have an agenda, a mission that we have to fulfill, and we have to hit that mark. And we're pushed and nudged, and synchronicities show up and things to make sure we stay on the agenda that we set for ourselves. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
kind of creepy,
yeah, I
that
totally
show.
agree, and I
Yeah.
think we have catalysts as well. That's you know, because
Yeah.
the mission is number one. So even if something
Yes.
really horrible happens in our life to get us back on track, we don't realize that it seems horrible from this human standpoint. But when we have this
Mm-hmm.
mission to accomplish and we're not doing it, sometimes we need
Right.
help nudging us back on track.
Exactly. I have my partner, the person who shares my life with me, the person that I have.
Excuse me.
He wants to know why. He thinks my life should be easier because I'm here on this mission. He thinks that I shouldn't have to, have all these challenges that I've had. Lose my family and be challenged financially, be challenged in all the ways I'm challenged because of the work I'm doing as a volunteer. And I said, no, it don't work that way. Pretty sure it doesn't work that way. You don't get cut any slack. You don't get to live high off the hog while you're here doing your work. And I remember before I came here saying, I want to have the whole human experience. This is my one and only time to be on planet Earth as a human. I want to know what it's really like. I want to experience it all. And so
And you were
I
even
probably shouldn't
warned as a child, weren't you? I mean, when you were really young, you talk about in the book how you knew
have.
around 2009, I think it was, you say that
Mm-hmm.
you would lose everything because you thought, was it a bomb? What's going to happen? How am I going to lose my
Yes.
family and all that?
Yes, I remember that as clear as if it were this morning.
Yeah.
I remember that memory better than I remember this morning. It was very chilling to me because Da was sitting there, and his energy is usually very loving and gentle. I mean, just and I almost felt it wasn't fear, but it was deep concern, and that scared me when he told me about that. And yeah, he was exactly right. Everything. I lost everything. So it's part of the experience of being here. I'm not sure. I guess it's because I wanted it, maybe. I don't know that necessarily it's part of being on this mission, but I'm not sure. Maybe it is because I certainly have firsthand knowledge of how for instance, the financial system is rigged, and how they were able to take me down and take away everything I had worked for my whole life,
Yeah.
and experiencing that firsthand and the unfairness. Well, not wow, it's so unfair, but the way this world works and seeing how it's all manipulated and it's all controlled by the few. It's one thing to experience it. It's another, to just look at it and think what it's like, but to go through it yourself, it's interesting.
I think a
So
lot of us experience that. I know when, if you go through the law of one material and then Dolores Cannon's material, you realize why you quite never understand the violence, or, a lot of us were bullied heavily because we just didn't, maybe we showed that we were a little nicer than we should have. Because sometimes you have to put up
yeah.
this front or people try to take advantage
Hmm.
of you. And to think of the
Right.
technology we're at today and the things we can do, yet there's people sleeping on the street and starving is just mind blowing how we
I
can be
know.
so
I
far
know.
advanced on one aspect, but and we're not even told the truth about exactly how far are advanced. And then on the other end,
Right.
we've got people starving. It makes absolutely no
I
sense
know.
to a lot of us. I mean, we just
No.
can't wrap our head around that because this really isn't our home.
Right. But it makes sense now that we know the control system is, I mean, it's coming out so much now
Yeah.
lately, really just big time. The way the whole deep state is set up, the whole dark system, and how, I guess, how little we are thought of. I mean, we've truly, when I start saying you're an enslaved civilization, and you don't realize you're slaved, you're working to live, just to live. And I thought maybe I was pushing a little too hard on that. And I guess that's I've been told that's why I got poisoned and attacked, is because I did come right out and say that. But it came from a deep knowingness within me. And then after I would say it, I would go, oh, that's probably pushing a little too much. But it turns out, no, probably wasn't pushing enough, because it really is horrible what has gone on and what some of these people and have been capable of doing now that all the pedophile stuff is coming out, and the sacrifice and how the Luciferian network,
Yeah.
it's just beyond comprehension sometimes that people can be that dark. But that's the world of contrast that we chose to come into, I guess.
Oh yeah, and it's far worse than a lot of us. I mean, a lot of us knew about this whole control structure, but we didn't know quite
Mm-hmm.
how bad it actually was. And it's
No, no.
and now it's all coming out. And so you still talk with Da, by the way, for those who don't know, is your contact, your extraterrestrial contact that you've had throughout your life. Da, you refer to him as, because you mentioned his name. And
Mm-hmm.
for those who haven't read the book, that's who Da is. But you do have continued contact with Da even up to today, don't you? Does,
Somewhat, yeah. They had told me back, boy, I'm real bad with dates, especially since the attack. My, you know, poison does things to your mind, your memory. And so I'm trying to remember. I know that I heard from him, for sure. I heard from him 3 days before the election.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting little thing, because he told me probably in 2014, 15, somewhere in through there, 2014, I would guess, that, oh yeah, I had contact with him then because I was being visited by Draco, so he was here then. But he told me that they would not be coming in to pick me up physically as much as what they had been, and may not get in to pick me up at all. And when I asked why, he showed me a thing of like, it reminded me of in 5th grade when we learned about the earth and how the platelets in the earth, they shift and when there's an earthquake and stuff. And he showed me like that, and he said, you're shifting and moving between the frequency, I guess dimensions. Actually, he said you're going like from 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. He said you're just bouncing all over, and it had something to do with them being able to come in and get me. And he said we just have to have hands off right now. And they were busy. I think they're busy doing whatever role that they're doing in this whole ascension thing. But I did hear from him 3 days before the election, which was really interesting because I didn't expect it. And I was walking through my house and he just opened up that pipeline and he said, it will be Trump. And I just froze and I said, oh my God. And I started thinking about it and he said, he repeated it. It will be Trump. And I was starting to think that's horrible, in all honesty. But then I thought about the alternative and I thought, I guess, okay. And then I felt his energy and there was celebration, huge celebration. It was just like in the background, there were thousands of people or millions of people cheering. And there was just this great excitement. And he said, we can work with this, Sherry. We can work with this. And I said, really? And he said, yes, we can work with this. Because I thought it had to be, I didn't know. I mean, I guess Bernie Sanders, but I don't want to ruffle feathers, shouldn't talk about politics, right? But I was like, who could it be? Well, now we're finding out, of course, how the military went to Trump and there's this whole thing going on. So it's pretty interesting that my guys are involved well, I've always known they've been involved in our politics and in the structure of our world, because that's, I guess, what they do is help to oversee that. And it's part of our evolution. It's part of our awakening, the whole getting ourselves free from the control system. And that's the way that it has to be. But that's one of the last times I heard from him. So since then, yeah, I think they're just really busy. And they're around. I get messages from them, but it's just, we're here, we're supporting you, But I've been asking, I've been saying things like, when's the event? Is the event still on? Is it going to happen like this, or is it going to be a slow progression? And I want to know things like that. And I'm not, just like always, they don't give me the answers to my questions. They tell me what they want me to know, and that's it. It's frustrating.
You get the answer of soon so much from so many different sources. Soon, it's like, soon could be tomorrow, it could be next year. They're like, that's the point, I think, They don't want us to plan around a certain date or anything. They want us to sort of keep on our mission, I think.
Is it on a timeline? I mean, is it on a timeline? The timeline shifts because we're multidimensional, because there are all those different timelines. We can access the timeline that it could be, this afternoon at 5 o'clock if we all just woke up and got in heart-centered. So we're affecting the timeline that, when it happens through our frequency. That's what I've come to understand. So there isn't any point set on a calendar. It's up to us. And that's tough because right now the planet, it's great, the things that are happening, but it's hard to stay focused in your heart sometimes, with all the challenges that are going on.
Totally. And talking about, because the book goes a lot into the timeline shifts and the dimensional shifts and, going to this higher level and all of this happening, but it doesn't specifically mention the Mandela Effect. Now, a lot of my viewers, including myself, have sort of gotten where we are because of the Mandela Effect. We saw reality changing in seemingly impossible ways. And a matter of fact, at the beginning of chapter, I think it was 12 in your book, you say, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. and
Yeah, yeah,
that's actually changed. So you have residue in your book of the way things used to be, like the way people remember it, but yet it's like total.
hmm
I don't. This doesn't seem like it's Kansas anymore. Or I have a feeling it's not Kansas
yeah,
anymore, or something along those
yeah. We're
lines.
not. Yeah, I remember that. Well, I didn't talk about. I don't know why, but I didn't put the Mandela effect in there. I didn't mention it by name, but I have a little story about the Mandela effect. I have stories about everything, you know. But because that's my life has been peppered with that stuff, so that I can. What does he call that? When I asked him about some of these things, like people want to know in my book why they dropped me in the pig pen out behind my girlfriend's house in the middle of the night. And I asked, I said, you know, that's a really rotten thing to do. Why did you do that? And he said, oh, that's a benchmark. You know, that's a benchmark. He said, you were going to, that was imprinted on your conscious memory and you were going to not forget that moment. We didn't want you to forget that. So the Mandela effect, the way that was driven home to me is pretty interesting because, let's see if I can remember how it went. Um, my fiance at the time and I, we were traveling in Ireland and we stayed at Ashbury Castle. And we spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 nights there. And while we were there, Nelson Mandela came. They had told us that Nelson Mandela was being let out of prison and that he was going to be coming to stay at the castle and that we needed to stay out of the main living area or main draw, whatever that room was that he was going to be coming into. And I remember my fiance and I looking at each other and going, didn't he die in prison? I thought he died in prison because I remember his wife giving this talk or this prayer or something. I could have swore that he died in prison, but then there he was. And as fate would have it, I actually even ran into him because I went to get a massage one morning soon after, and when I left the massage room, I snuck around through the castle and some of the back rooms you're not supposed to go in because I love castles, and I was sneaking around and through the hallways in my robe, no less, because I just come from massage. And I ended up in the drawing room where he was sitting with these other dignitaries, and there they were, and I came stumbling in
In your
my
robe.
white robe, you know. Yeah, but that's how my life works. I mean, my life has been a hoot in some ways, and so that's how the Mandela effect, you know, really it really hit me, you know, and so that's
That's
how
really
it works.
wild. Yeah, it
Isn't
is
that good? Yeah.
crazy, and a lot of people try to tell their family about it, and that's just another reason a lot of us are seen as crazy because, like, oh, you're just
Yeah.
misremembering. How can you,
Yeah.
think that, And it took me a year to see it, so I totally get it. That, the
Yeah.
memory is so, you can't really depend on
Yeah.
it, but when something that you're so sure about changes, then it sort of
hmm
wakes you up, and it's a real shock to the system. And I know you even went through that with this whole thing. That's why I think you were just talking about him dropping you, dropping you in the pig pen or whatever. And
Yeah. Peak pen.
there
Yeah.
was a couple of other instances. I think when you were talking about writing the book because you didn't really want to, and then he had sort of made a cool spectacle as he was leaving to sort of anchor that memory in.
Oh.
In the book you
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. When my daughter threatened me and told me if the
Yeah.
book came out she wouldn't talk to me again, and so I decided not to because I wasn't that keen on doing it anyway. So I was like, I'm not going to do this. And damn, he shows up that night, and yeah, makes a minor spectacle of himself. And again, yeah, that the flash of light and the big cracking sound, you know, that was so that I would remember because as soon as you're in an altered state, you know. It's like going back to that Westworld show, where when they pull those people out of that world and they take them into the lab or the wherever it is that they take them into the modern world and they make repairs on them and then they send them back in. They erase their memory, and that's just the way that is when Doc comes to visit me. That's why I'm not even sure when he's been here. And I have 3 groups I'm working with. He's the main one that I talk about. Don't talk about the other ones, but when he's there, I'm in an altered state. I'm in that I'm in that dimension with him. I come back into this world and it's either like a dream or it's just faded away or whatever. So he wanted me to remember that he'd been there and we'd had that conversation. And they do that purposefully. So it's a really weird thing. I mean, this reality is really very, they told, I got about 18 months ago that it's a computer simulated reality, in truth is what it is. That it's not what we think it is. It's totally fake. I mean, I've always said it's an illusion, but it's really, he said the closest thing to it is a computer simulated reality. And that it's a program that we decided to come in like a game and play, but that it's almost like it got a virus or something. It's almost like something got messed up with it, with the whole control system coming in, and through the humans kind of being distracted and looking away and not paying real close attention to what really was happening. And they allowed, through their complacency somewhat, they started to allow themselves to be controlled more than what they realized was happening. It just kind of snuck up on them, I think. So it's an interesting world, but it's all just fake. It's not real.
I find that interesting that a lot of times Dolores Cannon would regress people, and they would, after they died, they turn around and say, "Wait, it was all just a play. It was,
Yes.
all these, we got bad actors, good actors, heroes, and villains, and it's amazing."
Yeah. It's interesting. That's why it's so hard. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's when I first got onto the planet, you could see through the people's masks really easily. I mean, I still can, but I really, as a child, because I was new to it, I think I still retained a lot of who I was from before getting here. And everybody was so fake, I thought. And I would just be so puzzled. And I know my mother always said that I was a quiet child, and I would always go sit in the corner and just sit there and watch. That's because I was watching everybody, and I was seeing who they were pretending to be, and then I was looking at who they really were. I was hearing what they were saying, and I was hearing their thoughts. And I was trying to reconcile that and think, why would they do that? It's like they're playing a game of pretend. And so yeah, it's a very interesting world. We come here to have these experiences to know ourselves better, I guess, or just for the fun of it. But it's not always fun when you're here. You get caught up in it and you believe it's all real,
Yeah, and
But
a lot of that.
I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it sounds like you had the same thing because you commented before on being different than others.
Yeah.
Those of us who came in as volunteers, we don't hate. We don't know how to hate. We don't know how to really even hold anger very much or judge to any great extent. Yeah. So, and that's because, you see it for what it is, I think.
Yeah, and it kind of makes, like what you were just saying, it makes you not want to be around people sometimes because of seeing the fakeness, and then at the same time having to hide the fact that you see it, and that makes you feel fake yourself because you're not calling them out on it, but it's not in you to call people out on it. So it's like, what do you do?
It's not for us to do. I know. You let them play the game. You let them play the game. You let them be who they are. You send them love, or not somebody's gonna hear that and they're gonna think, oh, who, they're gonna think we're judging right now. Right. But that's not the way it is. I have a really deep appreciation for being here and for the colorful world that it is and everything. And but I do see it as a game. I can't take it too seriously, but it's hard not to at times, especially when, you go through the losses and you go through a little bit of suffering yourself. You can see why the distraction is so great. But
now you talk about synchronicities in your book, and how they actually got so overwhelming for you. And I've come across people like this. I think they're cool. I mean, every time I see one, I'm excited about it, but other people are troubled or bothered by it. And I tell them, I think it's a good thing. I think it's signposts that, there's this higher source, maybe your higher self or source itself saying, hey, I'm paying attention, you're on the right path, or there's signposts or whatever. But do you think it's could be an indicator that maybe we're being contacted by an extraterrestrial help force or something? Or what do you think it is?
Well, the way I see it, Shane, is it's all just us. There's only one of us here. And so when those synchronicities are occurring, I had tons of them, yes, and I get them a lot, even more now than ever. And I think of it as being, an aspect of myself that's saying to me, pay attention here. go over here, or here's this person who you're meant to connect with, who's going to help you or assist you, or be there for you, whatever. Because a lot of times in retrospect, you'll see it. At the time, you don't know it, but you have that sense of knowingness. That I've had that a lot with certain people who have come into my life, and they show up, and I'll even just hear a name of someone. I've had that happen many times. Somebody will mention a name of someone that they know, and I'll just know. I'll go, I have to meet that person. I'm supposed to meet that person. And so, and it's true. And I just follow and trust that. And that's what I do. And it shows up later as to why that person was meant to be in your life. And then you learn, of course, your guides. If you have communication, or trust your guides, and letting them show you and guide you, do what they're supposed to do. It all comes together, and you see the higher purpose to it all eventually. So I think it's an aspect, because we are all just one. And so we're all just having this dream and playing this game. And so we're helping each other out, but it's really just one of us. It's just one.
We're all like fractals of the source itself, aren't we? And that kind of gets into, that's a great segue into the 3 lessons that you were really meant to learn while you were here that you talk about in the book. And one of them is that we are all really one in essence, and that I think you gave this visualization. You want to share the one? I think you said you were like floating above your dad, and he took a knife and stabbed his own hand, or this is a vision.
Yeah. To show powerful. That was to show, was that that we're that was to show that we're multidimensional. What was it? We're all multidimensional beings existing on.
It's really what we're doing to ourselves when we do. It's like when we treat other people a certain way. It's really like we're doing it to ourselves. Is how the vision went.
It was a tough one. The 3 important things to know. That one was a mouthful for me. I was 5 or 6 when they started teaching me that stuff, and trying to explain to me that we're multidimensional and that we exist on more than one level simultaneously. I was like, huh? What? But they showed me that with my dad, and that's very, very, very clear. I can see every color, every nuance of that yet, of being behind him and back up over his left shoulder. And he's sitting at the kitchen table, and it's got a red and white check, one of those old oil tablecloths. And he's sitting there with his hands on the tablecloth, and their utensils are sitting there next to him. No plate or anything else, just the utensils are sitting there. And he's just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And and his hands are resting there, and then just very suddenly, he picks up the fork, and he picks up the fork, and he stabs it through his hand that's resting there. And the blood just, and it was shocking to me. I was, oh my God, but the idea that his right hand would stab his left hand like that, just, no one would do such a thing if they were in their right mind. And it just impacted me so much that is what we're doing when we hurt another person. We're hurting ourselves, because we are all one. So the lessons, that we are all one with our Creator. We are multidimensional beings existing on more than one level simultaneously. And then monitor your thoughts. Those 3 important things to know, they all kind of end up in the same ball under oneness, because we are all one. The monitor your thoughts thing that they taught me was really one of the things that I could really utilize and put into practice from the time I was a little girl, and it helped me a lot. And I think that now Eckhart Tolle is teaching that with being in the now moment, which is such a big thing to practice. So I'm grateful that they taught me that. But that also leads back to oneness, because it affects your frequency. So.
Totally. And I think the fact that, when you do monitor your thoughts, it forces you back into the moment. So it's all connected when you really think about it. It's like when you really consider what you're sitting there thinking about, you're in the moment thinking about that. Even if you're thinking about tomorrow, you're still in the moment now thinking, or, observing yourself thinking about tomorrow. So that's an amazing tool. That sort of gets me into the thought of, because you mentioned this sort of in A Course in Miracles that you mentioned in the book, which my
Hmm.
guest Eileen, that's on all the time, she talks about that highly about that, and that was really instrumental in what you've learned as far as
Hmm.
controlling your thought. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You actually said you have a class later today, right? In the email you
Yeah, I
sent me.
do. I teach the course.
Nice.
Where right now we've gone through the Course in Miracles and with this class, this group, and now we're doing what's called a follow-up book, which is the Course of Love, that we're going through.
Hmm.
But the Course in Miracles was huge in my life, and for the most part, I think most people. I've had a lot of people comment on it, on me bringing that up and tying that in the book to the teachings of what my guides taught me and the whole lessons, because it all folds in together, and that is because the truth is just the truth.
Hmm.
And the Course in Miracles has resonated with me from the moment I was able to understand it. When I first started reading it, it was like reading Greek, but I just stayed with it and stayed with it, and I broke through, because you can't really get it until you break down your ego enough to where your ego doesn't interfere and misinterpret it. Because a lot of people will read the course and it's easily misunderstood, because your ego will get in there and twist it and have you interpret it a certain way. It's written in a beautiful way so that you have to force your ego into the back seat in order to understand it. And until you do that, you're just reading it and scratching your head and going, this is ridiculous. This makes no sense. This is stupid. But the Course in Miracles is a way of raising your frequency just by studying that. And now the Course of Love has come out recently, and that book was also channeled, and it's more for the times we're living in now. The Course of Love, if you read that and study that, go through it, that will help the ego to be diminished in you, which will free you from your ego. So it's huge. So yeah, I'm teaching. We have that tonight. Every Wednesday night we have that class in Madison.
Oh, nice. I was
So
raised heavily in church, and when I was a lot of the things that they teach in religion, I've come to understand it a lot better now that I've sort of gotten out of religion or whatever. I had this
yeah,
little epiphany when you were talking in the book about surrendering to your higher self, and it's not surrendering to your ego. It's actually you talk about sort of letting the ego go and to surrender to your higher self. And that really took me back to that one saying of Jesus. I think it was in the Garden of Gethsemane right before he was supposed to be crucified. And he said, "Not my will, but your will." And that
right,
really got me from not my will that's afraid of what I have to face, but your
right,
will, my higher self. And it's like
right.
I understand this in a much deeper way. When I read that part in your book, it really took me to so many of the sayings of Jesus I now understand in a whole new light. That it's
Right,
like that's what he
right,
meant. Religion
right.
just takes it and twists it all around. But
I know it. I know it. I like to say that religion took the crucifixion and the resurrection, which was a story of we are more than a body, and we are eternal beings. That was the lesson of the crucifixion and resurrection. Instead, religion took the cross and beat us over the head with it and said, "You're sinful, and this man died because you came into this world sinful." And that wasn't at
exactly,
all
yeah,
what it was
yeah.
about. But
And
in
at
the
the
course,
basic I was going to say at the
in
basic
the
level, they took the story of life and turned it into the story of death. I mean, if you really look at,
exactly.
and then it's like, wow,
I know.
we're like taking the focus off of all the things he taught during his life that were so important, and we're just focusing on
Yeah.
his death as the answer to all of it, which is sort
Mhm.
of morbid if you really think about it. Yeah.
It is. It is. It isn't about the crucifixion. It's about the resurrection. It's about showing that life continues on. The body is inconsequential to it. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. The body is a product of the ego.
Hmm.
The ego being part of our free will. That's why free will in this planet, free will is what got us into all of our trouble. Free will is it's the virus that poisoned the computer program. It by choosing other than choosing with God, you're choosing for something other than God. Well, what is that going to be? It's not going to be good.
Right.
So 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 free will is actually a lot of people, and even myself when I first started having those ideas, when I started hearing myself say that, because that's what will happen is stuff comes out of me, And I'm listening to it and I'm going, don't say that, Sherry, don't say that. That's not true. When I first time I said, free will is the problem. And then I heard myself once say, karma is over and it's part of a game to keep you trapped here. And I was like, oh, don't say that, but it comes out. And then afterwards I'm like, oh yeah. And I'll listen to it. And I'll be like, and then I'll know on a deep level, that's right. I don't know where it came from, but that's right. Not saying that I'm always right or that I know everything, but when I'm lecturing or talking, I'm tapping into something that is coming through me that sometimes it's not coming from my intellect.
Yeah, same thing happens here. I go completely unscripted because I try to get out of the way as much as possible, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, and that's true for all of us. I mean, we all have that because again, we're all one. So we can all tap into that truth.
Yeah.
That knowledge.
Now, on one level, I can see in my life, especially looking back, where I know I was guided. I know thoughts that I had that I thought were my own idea that popped in my head were given to me. And I only know that later on, like even starting this channel, it was like, it's kind of like this idea that just popped in my head. And, and then looking back, it was like, oh, wait a minute, I was supposed to do this. This was like a huge purpose. Is there a way you would suggest for people to have a better, I don't know, knowing of, in the moment that you're getting it from a higher source? Because I feel like I'm being helped. There's no problem with the help. I know I'm receiving it. It's just I don't usually realize until later on. Is there some way to develop contact in a better way?
Well, first of all, there's no mistakes. I would say that, to agonize over the road not taken and all that is not a good thing. If you're meant on your mission and your purpose of life to do something, odds are real good that you'll do it. Is if you are always asking that you be shown the right way to go. If you're always showing that willingness, the Course in Miracles says, show a little willingness. If you show the willingness, and that's what I did even for years before the book came through me, I would go on my daily walk down the road here. And as I would do that, I would commune with God and I would say, I just want to serve you. I just want to do whatever it is that I'm here to do. Show me what it is you want me to do. And this is back when I was selling real estate and living a very normal life. And I mean, I knew about the ET contact stuff, but still, I was just hadn't come out publicly with all this. And so you show the willingness, and then you just be open to it and you trust. So you show willingness and you trust what comes your way, and it isn't that you don't question anything, but in your heart. And so you don't think about it with your head. You think about it with your heart. You allow your heart to lead the way with you. And people hopefully know what I mean when I say that. You can feel it when it resonates with your heart. If you start to analyze and you're going to sit down and make a list about the pros and cons of why you should or should not do something, you're in ego. That's the ego, because only the ego analyzes and tries to figure out something. The heart just knows. So there's a knowingness that comes with it. And so you learn to trust. And that was one of the that's a lesson that comes from going through the losses. In the Course in Miracles, in the teacher's manual, there's a section in there that I have it worn down, and it's all, I can barely read it. I read it so many times because as I went through my losses, it tells how you will go through the losses because that's how it works in this world, in order to show you that you don't need anything. You don't have need of anything that this world has to offer. And so the things, when you surrender, which is what I did one day sitting right here, and I surrendered, and bam, that's the next day, my whole world started to fall apart. I mean, and I lost my family and my wealth and my everything all in a very short period of time. And my whole world just imploded so fast. And you wonder, the bottom's dropped out from under you, but you learn to trust, and you learn to understand that you don't need anything that's of this world. And it takes time and time again, because just when you think that you've gone through all the losses and you can't lose any more, it happens again until you finally get it. And it's a lesson in trust is what it is. It's not a lesson to say that you shouldn't enjoy this world and you shouldn't have the things this world offer you. It's not about that, but it's about going deeper than that and learning that you just trust in this world, in life, to support you. And so that's where it takes you.
That's interesting.
So it's a journey. It's a hell of a journey.
Yeah.
But I always say, and it's absolutely true, that I went I wouldn't trade what I have learned or experienced and gone through for anything, because as painful as it was at times, and as interesting and harsh as it is, and as hard as it is to be without family and to be without money, I wouldn't trade it for anything. The experience was worth everything. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. So
Totally. I
I've
totally
had
agree.
lots.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like no
the miracle.
mistakes, like you're saying,
Yeah.
because it's like you
Yeah.
can, looking back, you can see how everything, even what seemed like a mistake at the time, made us who we are today. And I wouldn't change anything because of the experiences
Yep.
that brought me to where I am.
I don't know that there are any mistakes. I mean, there's different paths you can take. We know that you can take the high path or the low path. You can go in anywhere in between. But there's really no mistakes. There can't be any mistakes. Even those who take and veer off and are playing the role of the dark ones in this world right now, they volunteered for that, and that they're serving a purpose in doing that. And their soul is having that experience because it wanted to have that experience. And so you have to honor that. So
Yeah, when you
it's
do
all
that, I
good.
think it helps you to love those individuals more when
Yeah.
they're seemingly undeserving of love, but it allows you to
Mm-hmm.
rise above the duality and just sort of love them at, just like at the end of the show when the villain and the hero comes out and they all bow and the crowd is clapping for everyone because everyone played their part well. And I
Right.
see it like that in a way. If you can sort of rise above the darkness and just see it from outside of the chaos instead of being sort of sucked into
You
the
know.
chaos, it becomes more
Yeah.
clear that
Mm-hmm.
because we're infinite
Mm-hmm.
beings. And I think sometimes we get confused with thinking that these bodies are all we are and that this is the end of it
No,
or whatever, but this
I know.
is, yeah, just a
I know.
grand play, right?
Yeah. It is, but it's a huge distraction. There's no doubt, especially when your body gets sick. My body is sick. It's in pain a lot of the time, or tired, or whatever, and it's a huge distraction, and it's hard. It's just a constant. It's not, but it's a constant challenge to always remember the truth of who you are, and to live on that higher level. And as you do that, the pain in the body can diminish, and the fatigue can diminish, because you're operating on a higher level. So it serves that purpose as well. I don't do that to try to heal the body so much as it's just where I prefer to live, is on that higher level. And see, I don't want to live in a world where there's evil and you have to have fear. I don't want to live in fear. Even with having Draco coming to my house, and I still don't fear them. I just, when I see them, I just can't. And I've had so many people tell me, you should fear them. They're this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, all I feel is love when I see them. I don't know what else to say. And even if they were the ones who poisoned me and I don't know who it was, you know, it just is part of the game. I obviously agreed to it or it wouldn't have happened to me. Nothing happens to me without my consent on some level. So why would I blame that being who is just another aspect of me?
I totally agree.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's
so
hard to
it's all
get to
good.
that point, but I'm finally staring to get there, I think. But yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to sustain it. Yeah, I
yeah, it
can
is.
be there. I can talk a big talk, but
Oh yeah.
catch me on a bed.
Well, you actually
So
talked about this technique you use to sort of envision taking pain out of your body. Did Dad teach you that? I'm trying to remember.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, he did teach me that.
can you share that
Yep.
story? I think it was a knee problem
Yeah.
maybe you had or something.
hmm I was pretty young at the time. I think I was pregnant even at the time, and so I would have been like 20 or 21, and I had my knee. Yeah, and it was very, very painful. I couldn't sleep at night, and I went to the doctor, and he said, you have a certain type of arthritis," and he said, you'll be okay for a while, but eventually, it's going to affect your ability, your mobility. You won't be able to ride. I was a big bike rider, and he said, no, you can't do that. That's going to aggravate it, and walking will become a problem, and it was just going to get worse. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm too young for this. I can't have that." And I was in bed one night, and Doc came to me, and he said, "You, why do you suffer? Why do you allow yourself to suffer?" or something like that. And I said, "I have this arthritis. It's kind of arthritis in my legs." And he said, "Why do you allow it?" And I said, "I don't have any choice." And he said, your body is like a house that you live in. If you live in a house with a broken window, do you not repair the window? And I said, no, I repair the window. And he said, so repair the body. And I said, how do I do that? And he said, and he showed me, so he said, you go into your body and you go into it, and he guided me to it. And I was able to do it. I went into my body, and I saw in my knee this green, dark green, almost black, gooey stuff in my knees, the way it looked to me. And I was surprised. I said, oh my gosh. And he said, pull it out. Or pull it out, or ask it to leave. That's what he said. He said, ask it to leave. And so I did. I asked it to leave, and it came out. And it was out of my body, and it was just there. And I said, now what do I do with it? And he said, give it to Mother Earth. She will transmute it. She will take it from you. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't give it to Mother Earth. I love her so much, and I couldn't do it. And we were outside. Consciously, I was still in the bed, but I was outside with him with this. And there was a pretty big rock sitting there. So I asked the rock, I said, would you mind taking it? And it agreed to take it. And so I sent it into the rock, and the rock transmuted it. And so that's how I did it. And I used that technique a lot over the years, a lot, to heal myself. And it works. Now with the poison, it's been a little bit of a challenge, because the poison, along with the alpha radiation that they hit me with alpha radiation, which lowers my frequency and really messes with you. It messes with you. And then the poison also it's in your mind, and it's hard to focus. So it was harder for me, but my guides, and I had other helping me to keep me protected and to keep me alive during that time. I've used some of the techniques. I still continue to use those techniques, but it was more of a challenge with the poison, but it works very well. Yeah. I've since heard other people who do that as well. So
it's hard to, I guess when your mind's attacked and you're going within to do this with imagination or whatever, it's or visualization, it's harder to do it if they're attacking something that deals with the mind, or even if the pain's so bad that it affects your mind, I can imagine it would still be difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to focus. It's very hard to focus. It was the way that they did it. Plus, they use implant, the Trojan horse implant, they called it, which actually controls your thoughts. It takes over your thoughts. And so they went after all of that, which is where my power was in my ability to focus and to get into that higher frequency. So,
but don't
pretty
you feel
not happy.
Don't you feel like there's rules in place, like we were just talking about? We don't think anything happens that wasn't pre-planned or allowed to happen.
Right.
And if you're meant to stay on this planet, and somebody, darkies come to take you out, they're not going to succeed, because if you're meant to stay here, you've got this higher source that steps in and says, wait, even if you're out of your mind and you can't protect yourself through your own thoughts, you do have protection, and that's actually happened to you. You share some stories on the highway where, you had some miracles happen. I know you talked about one in the book where, something happened, and it's almost like I don't know, I almost saw it like you jumped timelines to where it wasn't happening, because it's like the collision should have taken place, but somehow it didn't happen. And I know people don't believe you when you tell that, but I've had that happen too, so I totally know what you're talking about. And that's an amazing story.
Yeah, a lot of people have had that, and driving in traffic. I think a lot of people have, because don't you, when you go out in traffic, if I drive in a big city, Dallas, Austin, Milwaukee, wherever you drive in some of these cities where the traffic is just coming all, it's amazing there's not more accidents. And I think it's like that movie, what was that movie where they were the angels and they were hanging around on the street corners and stuff, and they were intervening and keeping accidents from happening and stuff. And it's got to be like that. But yeah, I've had so many of those close calls, and I think that in some ways, maybe, but I don't know for sure, but maybe it was because I've had more than most people have, that it might have been someone wanting to take me out. And so I have very strong protection around me. So yeah, so like with the poisoning, I did actually get to the point where I wanted to leave, but I was asked to reconsider and stay, and so I did. But we all have exit points, and I had exit points along the way, and I had some at that time, and I was going to take one of mine. But you can't go unless it's really, you have to want it. You have to ask for it, and you have to agree to it. In my case, I had to go before the council and ask if I could take my exit that was coming up in September, and of 2016. And after much discussion, they agreed to allow me to leave. But then there was intervention, and I was asked to reconsider and stay. And I agreed to it. I'm not sure why they wanted me to stay, but and I'm not sure. I'm not always happy that I agreed to do it, but I'm still here. So, yeah.
And it's funny that I don't recall, and the amnesia's working well, but on some level, I know I asked to be here. I know that that same thing's happened where I've wanted to leave so bad, and then the next day I'm like, you know what, I'll stick around. And it's almost like something happened in the middle of the night. Like there was a meeting and like, do you really want to leave? Do you really want to give up on the mission right now? No, I'll stay. And then I'm okay with it the next day, but have no memory of doing it. It's just I'm okay.
I know.
So.
But there's like a knowingness though, isn't there? There's no clear memory. There's a vague pieces of a conversation, or there's just something there that there was an intervention that came in.
The subject's been covered or something. It's like, this has been covered. I'm going to stick around and do what I need to do. So that's strange. I want more than just that knowingness, though. I'm always wanting more, and I guess if the time's right, I want to see the ships. I want to, remember being on them and stuff like that. And I think I've really had contact. I've had missing blocks of time when I was younger, where it was like I was sitting at my computer. I'm like, what's been going on for the last few hours? And and I just know something happened. Looking back on it, I realized it when I was reading your book. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's probably what happened that night when I was like, what the heck happened the last 2 hours or whatever? I just missed the block of time.
Oh, yeah. They're slick, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're slick.
Yeah.
They just, they came not that long ago. And it was a while. It was in November of 2011 is the last conscious time I saw the ship. And they came up the valley to pick up a friend and me. And, even though that's 2011, I should have known. I knew they were coming. The book had already been written. And still, after it was all over with, and we didn't realize we had missing time it took us a year before we both realized we had like an hour and a half of missing time then, and we were in this spot, and then we were in this spot. But at the time, I remember saying to him, did we have missing time? Did we go on the ship? Where did the ship go? Why are we, and we're like, no, it's all good. We just saw a ship, and that's all. We didn't have any interaction. But yeah, they're slick. They're really good. So yeah, you can have contact and have no memory, no recollection, no idea.
And I guess on some level, if we're ready, they'll allow it. Or do you think they're just not allowed to? You think it would just disrupt our lives too much? That's sort of how I felt about it. I'm like, it would just be too much of a disruption. Well, but in your case, you needed to write about it to maybe encourage others that, I don't know.
They don't. It's absolutely, you remember, you have recall of what they want you to recall, or what we decide we want to recall. Because that time in 2011 when they picked me up, and it bothered me so much because there was a total change in me afterwards. Afterwards, I was very, very depressed after I had that meeting on the ship in 2011. Very depressed. And I had lunch with my ex-husband, and I heard myself say to him, something's gone wrong. It's not going well. There's been a delay, and it's not going well. The dark forces are fighting harder than we know. This is not going well, and I've been reassigned, and I don't like what I have to do. But I couldn't get to what it was, and it bothered me so much, and I was very upset about it, that I actually flew to California and had a reading with Bashar. And if you know who Daryl Anka with Bashar.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to him, and I asked him, and I said, Daryl, you got to tell me. I got to know what happened on that ship, because I was told stuff and I can't get to it, but it's big. It's very big. And so I met with Bashar, and he said, some things you just can't know at this time. You just can't know. You're not meant to know it. And you're right. Yes, something happened and a decision was made that's going to impact you. And that decision, it was, interesting. It was true that the dark forces were fighting more than usual, and that things were not going as well as had hoped. We were still going to be doing this thing. This ascension was going to happen, but it was way slower. And since then, I have heard Well, Corey Good is one who said it, and there's been others who I follow, spiritual teachers that I follow that have said that, there was this period of time where we just weren't ready for the light coming onto the planet and the amounts that it was coming on, and it had to be buffered
Mm.
and had to be, we had to be protected from it because it was just too much. We would have just blown up, imploded with it. And so that was what they told me about. And they told me that, I guess I learned at that time that I was going to be going through this whole attack, because I did agree to undergo what I experienced with this whole attack. So it's interesting. You remember only what you can deal with, because had I known what was coming up, I knew a little bit, enough to know that I wasn't going to like it, but I certainly wouldn't have wanted to know ahead of time what was in store for me. That would have been horrible. So they keep it, you shield it for your own sanity, for sure. It's interesting, isn't it?
It
It makes
really
you wonder,
is.
are we like puppets, and is that a part of ourselves that's pulling the strings, or it feels kind of like that sometimes,
That's what I felt
I don't
like.
know.
I felt like when that question was posed to me, I'm like, well, if we have free will, why can't I use my free will to get what I want here? And then I had this knowing, like I do, that we work in concert with our higher self, and we can't
Yeah,
overrule the free will of our higher self that knows and sees
right,
more and has more information about it. So if it's
right.
okay and it doesn't interfere with the overall plan that our higher self sees, then sure, we can get it. Or it
Hmm.
doesn't. But when it violates the free will of our higher self that knows that, hey, if this happens, this is going to totally derail your mission you're on, then no, you can't
Right.
have that. Because, I mean, we've all
Yeah,
hoped to win the lottery at some point in our life or something along those lines,
yeah,
that would have
yeah.
destroyed us, because then we would have been on a yacht somewhere, not raising the planet's
I know.
vibration,
I know, exactly. I know. That's exactly because I was like, I'm supposed to live from hand to mouth now. I mean, I worked really hard, became very wealthy, and now here I am in my old age, and I'm sick in my body, and I have to try to work every day, and I'm just scraping by. I'm like, this is really the life you want for me? And I was shown that if I had money, I wouldn't be paying attention. I'd be off playing. I'd be, I wouldn't be involved in it, and that's probably true. So you gotta
Yeah.
trust it. You gotta trust the plan, huh? As they
Totally.
say.
Yeah, and I don't know how many
Yeah,
days that I've thought, man, it'd be so much easier just to go back and do what I do and, make
yeah,
money and just get what I want and have my needs met
yeah,
easily and know that they're going to be met and not have to trust. But,
yeah.
and I thank my viewers, because it's really viewer supported, and they've really, helped me. And I can trust that, there's enough people that's in tune that, keep me doing what I'm doing, and I'm thankful. And it keeps me trusting, this constant relationship of
I know,
trust. And I'm sure you have
I
to do that
know.
with, your book and everything.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It's just amazing. I no longer fret about the finances or anything. I've finally really gotten to the point where I just I've had so many miracles. So many people just bless their hearts. They help me, and I'm so grateful. And for like you, I mean, because that's what we're here for, and we need that kind of support. In all honesty, I mean, look who's going to do your job, the job that you do, and you're doing it instead of out working a 9 to 5 job, and you're bringing the truth to people. And so I would think that those who benefit from that would support you, and financially. It's just unfortunately it's the way the world works. Money is a part of it for the time being, anyway.
But you
And
know what?
so
It's so fulfilling. It's the most fulfilling,
yes,
you know,
yes,
job that anything that I've ever even been a part of. So it's more
I
fulfilling
know.
than money can ever even, touch.
That's what,
So
yeah. That's what I said. That's why I went on do, as awful as it was and as bad as it got at times. The experience was just, and that's how I look at it. I'm older now. I'm toward the end of my life, and I look back at my life and I look at it. It looks like a quilt. It looks like my grandmother used to make quilts, and I was always mesmerized by some of them. They were so beautiful, and that's how my life looks. It looks, you've got the rich colors here, and then you've got some darker tones there, and some muted tones over there. But then you get the silver thread and the gold thread running through it. And it's been a beautiful life. The experiences. I feel like I've lived more in my life than I ever deserved to experience. It's been so rich, so amazing, miracles. So it's been quite something.
that's
So
wonderful. And the contrasts are
yeah,
actually nice when you look back on them. I
Yes.
mean, they're tough when you're going through
Yes.
it, but you're like, the
Yeah.
good times wouldn't have felt so good if I didn't have those periods of darkness
Yeah.
here and there.
Yeah. I know it. It's been amazing. Yeah. I really have thoroughly enjoyed my life. It's been really cool. Yeah. No regrets at all on it. So,
Well,
yeah.
it's been a huge pleasure having you here, Sherry, and I want to encourage everyone
Oh,
to get your book and read it because it's a real big eye opener. My gosh. Um, a ton of people in the chat here. We already have a few that's read the book and that are reading the book. So maybe we can have you back for an update sometime. I know you've been on. You don't do any personal in-person appearances anymore because I saw one where Dolores Cannon actually introduced you to come out at one of the
yeah.
UFO conferences. I'm like, oh my gosh, you met
Yeah.
Dolores Cannon because by the time
Oh,
I came
yeah.
across her stuff, she had already passed away. So
Yeah, no, she's my editor. She was my editor, and so yeah, I was the first public speaking I did was at her, or the first big conference was at her conference, and I had to back away from the big conferences because of the directed energy weapons. I have been hit with those weapons, and it's pretty tough. So I had to cancel and not go. And plus, my health is not that great, but I get energized when I go and speak. I'm supported that way. But what I'm doing is I'm doing a small thing locally,
hmm
and I do these when I can online. I hope to get back out and do the conferences because I really enjoy them. But I'm not ever sure how my health is going to be, if I'm going to be well enough to travel or not. So I'll have to give it some time yet. I'm doing stem cell, and the stem cell treatments are helping me. So I'm hoping to get back to where I can. I'd love to do that full time. Just speak about this all the time. It's my passion. So I hope to. Yeah.
awesome. Well, if anybody wants to join in with your local, is your website the best place for people to get a hold of you or to find out what you do?
Yeah. Yeah. On my website, I have a guy who's helping me out with it because otherwise it just sat there and it never changed. But I've started doing a blog, and I'm trying to keep up with my blog a little bit. But it's not always easy for me to find the time and energy. But I am posting on there. I'm hoping to start doing lecturing in the Midwest and slowly branch out from there. And we're doing a trial one on October 27th or 28th, whatever day it is, of in my community down here south of Madison and Belleville at the UFO days. It's where I had my experiences, and so they have this little fun festival on the weekend. So we're going to do a day-long lecture series. Don Schmidt, the guy who investigated me, and myself, we're going to speak, and so we're each going to give a couple talks, and it should be fun. And if anybody's in the area for that. But otherwise, I've been staying away from the big conferences for now. But
But that's
get back to it.
theforgottenpromise.net
Yep.
is your
Hmm.
address, and they can find the book there as well as upcoming
Yep.
your local. Is your information about the A Course in Miracles on there as well?
No, Course in Miracles is on Meetup. That's in Madison.
Oh, okay.
It's just a Course in Miracles group. Oh, no, I think I might change it to the Course of Love. I'm not sure. But anyway, you'll find it on Meetup in Madison.
Oh,
Okay.
Meetup Madison. Okay. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much for joining. Lots of
Thank
love and
you.
light to
Appreciate
everybody
it.
in
Thanks,
the
Shane.
chat, and thank you again, Sherry. Hang on just a second. I'll be right back with you. If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.